Well, as we heard earlier, the economic fallout of the coronavirus continues to plunge the aviation industry into uncertainty. Let's get more on this from Geneva with Andrew Charlton, the Managing Director of Aviation Advocacy. Andrew, good to talk to you. Quite a time for the industry. We are having Virgin Australia, a big casualty in Australia. If no consortium is able to be found to rescue it, are most countries around the world grappling with this kind of impact on their carriers?
I think it's fair to say, Beverly, every country in the world is grappling with this. We've had an unprecedented outbreak of the use of the word unprecedented. Yes. This really is quite unusual. The last time we had anything like this was World War II, and since then the industry has worked forward under some very interesting regulatory structures, increasingly outdated regulatory structures, and now everything is collapsing.
Let's talk about what emerged out of World War II and how the airline industries were supposed to compete, because it is a fascinating sort of evolution.
Well, fascinating is the word. Nothing gives me more pleasure than to talk about it. But well, unless we want to talk about football. But the 1944, not even 1945, 1944, when the war was still going, was a regulatory structure that was perfect for 44, but it was very much nationally based. Each country had its own airlines. Those airlines had to be substantially owned and effectively controlled by its citizens. And then as the world globalised after that structure has become increasingly outdated and increasingly difficult to justify. The problem is now that we're stuck with 250, 300 airlines in the world, but IATA, the International Trade Association for Airlines, reckons that only 30 of those are profitable. That was profitable as at the end of last year before the COVID-19 arrived. Now we're in a place where even those airlines, of course, have no revenue because they're doing, in effect, no flying. So what we should do is take the opportunity to perhaps reflect a newer structure for the newer world. When in 44, when the Chicago Convention was drafted, we hadn't invented jet engines. We hadn't invented the wheelie bag. We hadn't invented in-flight movies, all those things that we think of as standard in aviation today.
And so is that likely? Do you think there will be some form of shakeout, and will we see, if 70% of those carriers were not successful or financially turning a profit, will many of them go under?
Oh, I think there's no question that a lot of airlines will go under. The problem we're having at the moment is that nobody knows how long this will go. So everybody is desperately trying to save the airlines that they have, desperately trying to prop them up in the hope that the crisis will end and then we can start again. But I think as every day goes on, that becomes increasingly untenable. So what we probably need is a situation where we have international airlines. At the moment, we have national airlines that sometimes fly to another country. It's not the same thing at all. And to start to better integrate the airlines, the airports and the air traffic control agencies, because it's wrong to just think about airlines in this. This is actually an aviation industry issue that we have to discuss. Aviation is an ecosystem. The airlines want you to think of it as a value chain. But actually, a healthy industry needs healthy airports, it needs healthy air traffic control agencies, and it needs healthy airlines. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and I mean, at a time before this pandemic, travel had never been greater. I mean, you never saw more people travelling around the world before. So cast your eyes 6 months down the track when this might have settled down. Do you expect the industry to bounce back quickly?
Well, no, I'm afraid I don't, because 6 months down the track, I think the industry can't start to bounce back in any substantial way until there's a vaccine. And nobody's suggesting there'll be a vaccine within 6 months. I mean, 12 to 18 months seems to be what number we hear. Finding a vaccine for viruses is extraordinarily difficult. But even if it started raining vaccine this evening, miraculously, the industry would, I think, still require a very long time to quote, normalise, unquote. But that's not going to happen. It isn't going to rain vaccine tonight. I hate to break that to you. But the problem is, therefore, we'll be stuck. The best case scenario under the current situation is that we are allowed some flights to some countries. I can't imagine a circumstance by which New Zealand, for example, which gets close to eradicating the virus, would allow flights from the United States. They may allow flights from Australia, and that's terrific, but it's only a subset. And on the aeroplane, there'll still need to be social distancing. And great news for the long-legged, of course, because we'll have to pull the seats a bit further and you'll have the seat beside you empty. But airlines will be asked to fly huge numbers of empty seats around, which is very uneconomic under the current model. So I think it's inevitable that eventually everyone will say, we have to redo and revise entirely the structure that we've got.
Well, as soon as we can talk footy, we'll get you back on to do that, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
See you. Talk soon.